Hello and welcome to episode 13 of my trip down memory lane back to the Pacific Crest Trail and to my Thru-hike exactly 10 years ago. In the last episode, we went to Belden, which is a small resort in the middle of the forest, and we camped there a bit out of the way because there was a techno festival going on. And the next morning, we were shuttled to Little Haven by the Bratons. It's some sort of a hiker hostel near Belden, but you can also spend the day there, take a shower, and just enjoy the time. And that's where we went first. And from there, we went to the post office where we had our resupply package. Unfortunately, it wasn't there, which was a bit of a shock because there was nothing to buy and stuff like that, or at least not much. So we were like, what are we going to do now? And we first of all, we had a milkshake to calm down. And then we went back to the Bratons and found our resupply package there. Sometimes it's a bit chaotic, so the mailman, they know that most of the people that hike the PCT do go to the Bratons, and they just deliver the PCT boxes straight to them, or maybe also the Bratons took them. I don't know. But in the end, we had our resupply package, and that was a happy outcome to this experience. And yeah, that's how it was. And we set off again then and walked right past this wonderful blackberry bush. It's always really nice when nature provides you with something to eat, and it tasted so delicious. I'm generally quite a fan of berries. Anyone who has ever eaten blackberries or other berries in the wild knows that they just taste so much better than the store-bought ones. So, of course, we helped ourselves and enjoyed these wonderful berries. Down here, it's a bit blurry now, but here you can see already a few of the festival setups and so on. And a few days later, some friends of ours were there and they walked through while the festival was in full going. And the whole river was full of people sitting in some rubber animals and just floating on the river while the music pumped out of the speakers. That was probably quite funny. He showed us a photo once. Yeah, but then it went on quite steeply uphill, and somehow I was a bit, what can I say? I was a bit slow, I would say. And at some point, we just pitched a tent, and we didn't really hike that much that day, which I think is perfectly fine. But for the next day, we had set ourselves another 20 miles. And we started the next day, and it was quite a steep climb again. So it was generally up and down the whole time now. But actually relatively moderate. So it was never a particularly long climb like in the Sierras or anything like that. And then there were another 100 miles done. We soon passed the 1300 mile mark. Well, by now it felt like we were breaking the 100 mile marks every day, but of course it took us a few days to get there. But you could tell that we were really making much faster progress than a couple of weeks ago, and that was nice. So we decided that evening, or rather in the afternoon, I had been looking for a place to take a lunch break and had found a really nice spot, but it was getting cloudy and I could also hear some thunder, and then I put up the tent because I just didn't want to get wet during the break. And then I laid down and it was so comfy, and I thought, this is actually quite a nice place, so I could actually stay here for the night. And well, that's what we did. It didn't rain at all in the end, but we just stayed there and did nothing all afternoon, which was really nice. Sometimes you also have just to relax on the trail. We even did a 0 day on the trail once, which many people couldn't understand. Most people do 0 days in the cities. But we didn't feel like we were missing the city amenities at all, So, of course, we liked food and showers and stuff, but we were actually on the PCT to be in nature, to spend a lot of time in nature. And a 0 day in nature is actually the perfect place to do that. Yeah, that was really cool. After walking through the forest again for a while, we finally went out into the open again and immediately came across another spectacular rock formation. I don't know if it's volcanic or what, but it certainly looks pretty cool, and the vegetation had completely changed again. There were now more succulents and stuff like that again, cacti, and later on in the stage there were even manzanita trees again. So we went back into the desert, kinda. It felt like it, but well, more like a moderate part of the desert, like around San Jacinto area, for example. So it's not super dry, but it's definitely changed. Yeah, you can see a cliff bar here. Cliff bars were totally expensive back then. So I think they are still pretty expensive by today's standards. But back then, I thought they were so expensive, costing $2 or something. And I don't know. In any case, I never bought a single one. But you found them in the hiker boxes all the time. People seem to get tired of them pretty quickly. And I always took them with me because they give you really good energy. They're based on oatmeal. And, well, then they come in lots of different flavors. Like this one is crunchy peanut butter. My favorite one was white chocolate macadamia, I think it was called. And, yeah, I always liked to take them with me from the hiker boxes. Great pieces. Yeah, here again, the same landscape as just before on the slide. And above all, you could look through this, I would say this little gorge and then had this incredible mountain panorama in front of you. I don't know if this is Shasta already or which mountain it is, but it's always spectacular when you're standing there in such a great, rough, unusual landscape and then also have such a view in front of you. Simply beautiful. Yeah, and then it went on, and unfortunately it was again the case that water was totally in short supply, totally scarce. You had to plan really well again from here. I think in this direction out here, you had to go off trail to get to water, for example, because there was nothing on trail itself. And sometimes there were really big detours, like a mile or so. And that really takes a lot of time with filtering and hiking to the place and everything. You cannot just say, I'm going to run 20 miles today and it's going to take 5 hours. But you also have to plan for the fact that when you go off trail to get water, it might take half an hour to an hour with filtering everything, depending on how far away it is. And yeah, that was the case again as we approach Oregon. It's going to happen even more often. So it was a drastic difference to compared to Central California, also in terms of drought. But it's also logical. I mean, in Northern California, that's where most of the forest fires are, and if there's apparently so little water, then that's somehow explainable.
Soeben habe ich einen wirklich großen Meilenstein.
I've just reached a really big milestone.
PCT Midpoint. Kanada 1325
Canada,
Meilen.
1325 miles.
Die Hälfte ist
Halfway there.
Nicht ganz.
Not quite.
Die räumen den Pfahl hier nicht jedes Jahr woanders hin. Also
they don't move the post here every year, so the trail is always changing in length every year because they work on it. It has to be rerouted because of fires and so on.
Vorjahren und so weiter. Aber in 4 Meilen ist die tatsächliche Hälfte.
But in 4 miles is the actual half.
Aber bei so einer langen Strecke sind 4 Meilen eigentlich.
With such a long distance, 4 miles
nichts.
is actually practically nothing.
Und das fühlt sich jetzt schon ganz so an, als wären wir die Hälfte gelaufen.
And it already feels like we've hiked half of it.
Pennen heute an der offiziellen.
We're sleeping today at the official half.
An der eigentlichen genauen Hälfte. Aber ja. Die Hälfte ist geschafft.
But yeah, the half is done.
Tja,
well,
jetzt geht's
now we're heading
Richtung
home.
nach Hause. Schon verrückt.
It's crazy.
Keiner hier.
And nobody here. Yes, and I was totally crazy. Of course, I knew that it would happen that day. You can see that on your trail notes. But then to actually pass it, that's a crazy feeling when you suddenly realize that there is less hiking coming than what you've already done. And I sat there and it was kind of a feeling of pride, but also kind of sadness and loss because I just didn't want it to end. And knowing that I was now heading towards the end was kind of, well, extreme, and it was weird. And then there being no one, it was, this pole is really in the middle of nowhere in a relatively boring kind of ugly area, so totally unspectacular and no party and nothing. Well, but then I looked in the box with all kinds of journals in it, and I was going through them to check which people are still on the trail, people that I know from the beginning and have never seen again. And in the first few days, I met a lot of people, at the kickoff and so on, and at Scout and Frodo's. And many of them we have never seen again after a few days. But I found them again in the journals in the PCT Midpoint journal box, and there were some familiar names in there, and that was nice to see that people you somehow spent a few days with 2 months ago are still there. So yeah, I went on at some point because I wanted to go to the water that was nearby the actual half that I've just mentioned, and it wasn't far away. It was like, I don't know, a good hour or something more to hike. And then I put up the tent, and then we kind of sat in the tent, and there was another guy there, and we celebrated a bit that we made it halfway. And well, the next day we carried on as normal. Yeah, that was actually a gag, I think, a joke. I think everyone knows which way Canada is and which way Mexico is when you're already halfway there. But I did like this. Yeah, and the next morning we took it easy. We were actually always the last ones to get up in the morning when we were camping with people. Most of them were already gone when we woke up, but somehow it felt good for us to just get up relaxed in the morning and take our time. There were quite a few people who set alarm clocks. We did that a few times. When we wanted to go to Whitney, for example, or when we had to go somewhere in some city or something where it's just important to be in a certain place at a certain time. But if that's not the case, if you're just hiking for a day, I would never set an alarm clock. It's a totally crazy thing to do, in my opinion. At least I found my own biorhythm, both in terms of when I went to sleep and when I woke up. And well, at some point, we just started hiking around noon. Because in the meantime, many people also, they do 30, 40 miles every day, but we still wanted to do between 20 and 25 miles because we had the time and we didn't necessarily want to rush, and that's how we did it. And you can really hike 20 miles in no time in Northern California. It's really no problem at all.
So, vor kurzem
So, I recently entered Lassen Volcanic National Park and just went 300 meters off trail, 400, 500 meters. And you can see now that we are really in volcanic territory here.
Hier dampft es aus der Erde. Und da kocht Wasser.
It's steaming out of the ground here and there's water boiling. No kidding, it's boiling. It's boiling, it's boiling. It's beastly warm, it smells of sulfur.
Sehr, sehr eindrucksvoll.
Very, very impressive.
So, die Rehe mögen es auch warm.
So the deer like it warm too. Yeah, it's just a great sight to see something like that and to just pass by it for a short time. That's really cool. I knew that there was something about a geyser and so on, but I didn't know what it looked like. And it's not a geyser at all. So there's no fountain thing, but I still thought it was pretty cool. And I sat there for a while and kind of enjoyed the warmth. It was quite nice. Yeah, and then we slowly approached Old Station, and I can remember that I was pretty relaxed. So I used to try to cover as many kilometers as possible, as early as possible in Sierras and the like, so that I could somehow take an early break, be at camp for a long time or early, and so on. And it wasn't really like that anymore. I had already said in the last episode how the landscape and the way of hiking there slowed me down. And that continued. So I just sat there by the lake and just looked at it and didn't really pay attention to what time it was and what I still had to do today and so on, because in the meantime, we had also said a few times, hey, let's stay here. It's actually nice here. We're not in a hurry. And it was very pleasant to get into the status that you just calm down and just look at what the day actually brings without making any big plans. And that was very nice. Here you can see me repairing my trousers. They were pretty broken at some point. So the pocket was hanging down at the back and it was torn in the middle and so on. And yeah, having a repair kit with you is definitely important and something that has to be repaired from time to time. Our tent zipper was also broken quite often. My friend always sewed it back on, and we also got new zippers from Top Tent from time to time. That was all a bit annoying, but it's just part of it, and you have to do it. And I mean, if you put a tent through this stuff for half a year, then it's probably normal that certain wear and tear simply takes place. Then unfortunately we went through a burn zone again, which was always really depressing and not nice at all, and also kind of unpleasant. So, I mean, everything is cleared, so they check which trees can fall down and so on, but it's always a bit like, because some of them are only standing on very thin pieces of wood where you would think that if you step on them once, they fall over or something. But it doesn't seem to be the case, and yeah, it is of course depressing to see that and to know how much of what we have perhaps already looked at here in these series and where we would still go through has now been burned. That's simply sad. And the fact that, well, there is no real fight to prevent it from happening, like fighting climate change, fighting intensive use of forest and so on, that is really a shame. Yeah, but then we arrived at Old Station. Here again, a really beautiful dandelion. Although I think it wasn't a dandelion at all. You couldn't blow it away like you usually can. So I don't know what it was, but it looks like a dandelion. Well, pretty cool anyway. And in Old Station itself, we arrived there and then picked up our resupply package at the post office. And then we went to the JJ's Cafe and ate a big salad there with fries, and it was lovely. So we'd already been to the in Tehachapi to the salad bar where we were invited, and a salad like that is really a really nice thing when you can eat it after a week of bagged food, because it's just so nice and crisp and fresh, and not just in the terms of taste but also in terms of texture. It's always really nice to eat something like that, just like with fruit, for example. It's you mainly eat some mushy stuff, I'd say, and some bars and tortillas and stuff like that. It all somehow always feels unpleasant to eat, to chew, and when you then have a nice fresh salad like this, that's really, really nice.
So, wir Cowboy campen heute in der Vorhalle von Subway Cave.
So, tonight we are going to Cowboy Camp in Subway Cave.
Sehr angenehm. Morgen 30 Meilen. Hoffentlich, weil...
Very pleasant. 35 miles tomorrow, hopefully, because there's very little water, and so we're already lying here in our sleeping bags and enjoy a hopefully pleasant night in this wonderful cave.
Angenehme Nacht in dieser wunderbaren Höhle. Hoffentlich ohne Chipmunk Attacks.
Hopefully without chipmunk attacks. Hopefully without dripping from the ceiling. But it actually looks quite dry here, so that will probably work out. Yeah, and that was really nice. So this cave, you could walk right through it, so it had an entrance on both sides, so to speak, and that alone was super exciting. We walked right through it once, and it was also relatively long. I don't remember exactly, but over a kilometer, I think. And of course, we like to explore this. It's always nice to have something like this, like a natural monument or whatever. And of course, you explore it. It was actually really quite exciting. So there were also a few information boards inside and so on, where they explained a bit. And yeah, We then decided, after we had problems with chipmunks that wanted to get into the tent a few nights before, and it also looked like rain, to just spend the night in there, and that was really, really cool. We were lying in there on our sleeping pads, and the view was out here, and then we could see the weather shining in the sky, like the lightning and the rain and so on. And it was really, really somehow a cool feeling to sleep in a cave like that. And it was just perfect timing that we were there in that night when the weather was relatively bad. Yeah, but we mainly wanted to spend the night there because there was a spigot, which was the last water for a very long stretch without water, and we'll get into that in the next episode. But I can spoil it right now. That's definitely the day I drank the most water in my entire time on the PCT and also in my entire life. I have never drunk as much as in one day as I did in the following day. But until then, as always, please subscribe to the channel and like the video if you liked it. And if you want to share a story or have any questions, just let me know in the comments, and otherwise I'll see you in the next video. Ciao!